Welcome back to Joy Even on Your Worst Day, our conversation with Paul's letter to the church in Philippi. So Paul's drawing to the conclusion of this letter here, and in chapter 4, verse 8, he says, "Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, pure, pleasing, whatever is commendable." He gives a long list of virtues here, and then he says, "Whatever you've seen and heard in me, keep on doing, and the God of peace will be with you." So several times we've talked about the apostle sounds really arrogant here, and this is one of those places. Do what you see in me, and the God of peace will be with you. But we need to remember that Christian faith is embodied. It's not an abstract thing. It lives in people, and so it means we ought to be able to see Christ in one another. And Paul knows, and the Philippians know too, if we are going to become the people that Christ wants us to be, we're going to need to see Christ in others. So in my wallet, I keep this wadded up piece of paper, and on this piece of paper that I carry with me every day, there are a list of names. I don't look at it every day, but I look at them every day I need to. The names that are listed here, two of them you would probably know because they are public figures, but the rest you wouldn't know, and the truth is they don't even know they're on this list, but I carry their names with me because each one of these, in one way or another, has shown me what it is to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. They've shown me what love looks like, what forgiveness can be. They've shown me how to live defined by hope. They have been examples for me, and I carry them with me because some days when my faith is fragile, I just look at their names and I'm reminded of the Christ that I've seen in them. Now, none of them's perfect, and the truth is, not a one of them has come to me and said, "Tom, I think you ought to put my name on your list." If they did, they probably wouldn't be on my list. We don't do that these days. So it's important for us to be attentive to the ways we see Christ in others, that it might encourage and inspire us in our own journey of faith. And then Paul says, "I've seen Christ in you." He says it this way, "I rejoice greatly now, for you have revived your concern for me." He's speaking of their love for him. Revived your concern, it sounds like they forgot him for a while. He's not saying that. He's not saying at last you are remembering me. No, he's saying after all this time, you still remember me. They love him, and they showed their love in concrete ways. They sent him money, and they sent him Epaphroditus. Both were expressions of their care for him and their love for him, and that love has influenced the apostle. He says, "Because of your concern for me, I have learned to be content in whatever I have. I've learned the secret of having much or having little, of being well fed or of being hungry. I can do all things through him who strengthens me." There's a connection between his contentment and their love. In a part of this, the apostle, his words sound a little bit like the wedding vow. You know, "I promise to be loving and faithful in plenty and want, joy and sorrow, sickness and in health." I've done a lot of weddings, and I've listened to a lot of couples make that promise. And when they do, they're not really thinking about the honesty of that vow. They are lost in one another. Sometimes I can't even tell if they know I'm there leading the ceremony. But I see not only the couple, I see who they have invited. And they've invited others, some who have never made that vow, some who've made that vow decades or even generations ago. And those are the ones who recognize the honesty of this vow. For every human relationship knows joy and sorrow, Every human relationship knows plenty and want. And what we're promising there is, as best we are able, we don't want those circumstances to define our love for one another. We want our love for one another to help us navigate those circumstances. That's at least a contentment. About 30 years ago, my mother, when she was in her mid-50s, she suffered a pretty bad stroke. It meant she could no longer work, and it meant she had very few words left in her vocabulary. It's a condition called aphasia. If she wants a banana, she might just ask for a thing. She knows who I am, but she doesn't call me by my name, not in over 30 years. She just says, "Hey, love." That's how she greets me. It's also how she greets my wife and my sister and Dorothy, the LPN, who takes care of all of us by taking care of her. You know, to be locked up inside yourself like that, to have mobility diminished and language stripped away and friends living now at a pace you can no longer manage, it would leave a lot of folks bitter. But one word my mother has never lost is fine. I ask her how she is, and she says, "Oh, love, I'm fine." When the Apostle Paul says, "I've learned the secret. I have learned to be content with whatever I have," I believe him, because I've seen the faith of my own mother, who trusts that the Lord is near, and she is fine. She is not captured by bitterness or regret. She is fine. As Paul ends his letter, he turns to a theme that has held this letter together from the beginning. He says, "And my God will fully satisfy every need of yours according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus." Glory. What is that? That is that promised day of Christ that has been there from the very beginning. It is the day when, as Paul says, every knee shall bow and every tongue confess his lordship. It is a day we have not achieved, but we press on. It is a day when he says our body or life of humiliation will be transformed into his body of glory. This is Paul's hope. And this hope, it defines everything about him. It is a hope that shapes the present. Barbara Kingsolver wrote a wonderful novel called Animal Dreams. It's about two sisters, Cody and Hallie. And Hallie goes to Nicaragua during the Contra War, and she's writing letters to her sister. And in one of the letters, she says this. She says, "Cody, you're thinking of revolution as a great all or nothing. I think of it as one more morning in a muggy cotton field, checking the underside of leaves to see what's been there, figuring out what to do that won't clear a path for worse problems next week. Right now, that's what I do. You ask why I'm not afraid of loving and losing, and that's my answer. Wars and elections are both too big and too small to matter in the long run. The daily work that goes on, it adds up. It goes into the ground, into crops, into children's bellies and their bright eyes. Good things don't get lost. Cody, here's what I've decided. The very least you can do in your life is figure out what you hope for. The most you can do is live inside that hope. Not admire it from a distance, but live right in it, under its roof. What I want is so simple I almost can't say it. Elementary kindness. Enough to eat. Enough to go around. The possibility that kids might one day grow up to be neither the destroyers nor the destroyed. That's about it. Right now, I'm living in that hope. I'm running down its hallway and touching the wall on both sides. I can't tell you how good it feels. For Paul, the hope that he lives inside of is the hope of the Lordship of Jesus Christ that God is bringing to completion. The day of Jesus Christ is our hope. And we're not there yet. But the good things don't get lost. We continue to live toward that promised day. We live toward that day in each day now because that's what shapes our present. My brother is special needs. He's a grown adult, but he'll never read a book, not even a children's book. He'll never forget my birthday. He knows my name, but he prefers to call me brother, or the way he says it is Bueta. And my brother Gene, he has a dream. His dream is to drive a car. Sometimes it's a red car. Sometimes it's a van so he can put all his buddies in it and they can take a road trip. Now for Gene, driving it's not about hitting the road. It's not about claiming his freedom. Quite the opposite, actually. What he says is, when I ask him, Gene, where are you going to go? He says, well, first I'm going to go see Dad. Keep it a secret. I want to surprise him. I tell him, Gene, nothing would surprise your father more than seeing you pull in the driveway. I said, where are you going to go next? He says he's going to go see my kids, his niece and nephew. I said, Gene, aren't you going to come see me? He says, brother, you got your own car. You can come see me. So far, that's the only part of the dream that has come to pass. I went and visited him, and we went out to dinner at a place called Shoney's Big Boy because he thinks that's fine dining. We both ordered the cholesterol plate. We talked about baseball. We talked about what he was going to do for Christmas and what he was going to get me. And then we talked about what we always talk about. We talked about the places that he would go. And in a moment that I was unprepared for, he put his hamburger down and he said, Bueta, do you think I'll ever drive that car? And I said, Gene, yes, you will. Now look, he's not ever driving a car, not my car, that's for sure. He's not ever driving a car, but that's not really what he was asking. What he was asking is, do you believe there'll ever be a day when all that has gone wrong will be made right? Do you believe there'll ever be a day when all that is broken will be mended, when all that is bruised will be comforted? Do you believe there'll ever be a day when all that is wrong with me and with the world will be set to rights? And I said yes, because the good work that God has begun in us will be brought to completion. So we live toward the day. We live toward the day when there's enough to go around for everyone. We live toward the day when the disagreements that divide us no longer are separating us from one another. They're right-sized, and so our children have the chance to grow up to be neither the destroyers nor the destroyed. We live inside that hope when all the prodigals will finally come home and all the elder brothers will learn to dance. We live toward the hope when all will be welcomed at that feasting table. We live toward the day when the good work that God has begun in us will be brought to completion. We live toward that day. So I told him yes. The day is coming when all that has gone wrong will be made right. And because we live toward that day, because it influences the choices we make this day, the apostle and you and me in time can learn to rejoice even on our worst day.